the emerging culture will have a lot to do with reconciliating patriarchy and matriarchy so that they learn to dance together in a functional way. Because I think that the patriarchy we always had was a dysfunctional patriarchy. And functional patriarchy is the one who is in devotion to matriarchy and knows how to dance with her. That's in very short, like what I'm driven by. I would love to create more spaces where we can actually hold this tension together. I believe it's key for the emerging culture.
Welcome to Voices of Emergence, where inner transformation meets systemic regeneration. I am Rudy, and together with Alex, we journey with courageous thinkers, creators, and system shifters who are reimagining leadership, business, and community from the ground of consciousness and care. Today, we're joined by Timothée Brès, a thinker, builder, and facilitator of transformational spaces across inner and outer systems. Tim is a co-creator of Genesis Experience, a liminal rights-based gathering bridging somatic, speculative design, and Web3 culture. Through his writing, facilitation, and experiments in myth, movement, and decentralized technology, he maps new ways of being human in digital times. His Substack, Disco Punk, explores techno-mysticism, ritual architecture, and cultural patterning. A trained somatic practitioner and AI integration guide, Tim plays at the edges between psyche and code, grief and play, myth and emergence. In a world addicted to speed and signal, Tim reminds us that true change comes from inner sensing, outer coherence, and the courage to stay with the liminal. Welcome, Tim. And so the first question, when you hear the word emergence, what does it mean?
Thank you for this introduction. The first thing that comes to mind is water. The different states that water can incarnate, which is gas, freeze, liquid, or solid. And maybe emergence is about staying present while the nature evolves and shifts. And through this presence, having a kind of developing a relationship that informs me, us, about what's next. It's interesting because I just had a conversation and we were talking about the difficulty I have, and many of us potentially also have to say, I don't know. And I realize how sometimes I'm going to fill up spaces when I could just say, I don't know. Or I have nothing to say. It's not even I don't know. It's just I have nothing to say. And not trying to fill some kind of void because there's some kind of fear. So staying with this kind of discomfort for me is a key feature in working with emergence.
That's really beautiful. I enjoyed that. And it's good to see you, Timothée. How did you get here? What threads from your life converged or weave together to bring you to this place? I see culture, consciousness, code. Were there moments in life which brought you here?
Thank you, Alex. I feel that answering that question is very important because every time we answer that question about like our journey, we kind of reinforce some patterns. And in the end, the journey I'm going to tell you is potentially just a fraction and a very biased image of my journey. And the reality might be inaccessible even for me. I like this exercise as an opportunity to reinvent myself every time. One day I was at the house of a friend of mine, Ria Bach, that lives with Hélène. And Hélène read my astrological chart. And she saw how not only I had all the opposites planets, but what she shared is that one of my mission on this planet is to participate to the writing, the script of the emerging culture. So you believe it or not in astrology, I decided to kind of believe this because I feel inspired by that. And yeah, I would say that this is something that is driving me over the last more than 10 years. There's a world dying, there's a new one coming. What is the generative function of this emerging culture and how can I contribute to it? That's really a key drive for me. And in 2011, I was doing an internship in Manila, Philippines. and I had a mystical experience where I downloaded maybe another aspect of this mission. And it came to me through the form of a square and a circle that I connected to masculine and feminine energy. And my intuition is that the emerging culture will have a lot to do with reconciliating patriarchy and matriarchy together, so that they learn to dance together in a functional way. Because I think that the patriarchy we always had was a dysfunctional patriarchy, and functional patriarchy is the one who is in devotion to matriarchy and knows how to dance with her. That's in very short, like what I'm driven by. How can we hold the tension between the biological nature of sex and the socially constructed nature of gender? And how can we hold both at the same time? And I believe that a lot of our questions will be resolved through a new form of synthesis that I don't know what it is, but I would love to create more spaces where we can actually hold this tension together. I believe it's key for the emerging culture.
Thank you, Timothy. Very interesting. And you were very young, in your early 20s, basically, to come to that realization, which is a very mature imagination. It took me, I was in my 50s when I realized that. I'm also interested, I know you do a lot of activities online or with events and experiences, actually creating experiences of how people can actually feel into this masculine and feminine energy. So how do you give shape to that? Or like, what's your vision then? Or what is your experience? Or what is your, perhaps some deeper lying knowledge that you know, or something that's in between this culture and code and consciousness? I really like that. These three words, I think it's very, when I read those words, I know it's you also, that you are working with that. So how do you give shape to that?
Yeah, I think that's maybe a good point to start, is the electronic music from the past that I've been very involved. When I was young, in my rebellious age, I was doing a lot of partying, and I developed a very keen interest. I had my 18th birthday party in Berlin, and I went to the infamous Berghain and other clubs, and it really shifted my view of electronic music. And then I came back, I bought my first vinyl, and since then, so 15 years, I've been collecting and buying records. And as I said, I spend a lot of time in festivals and clubs, because this is what's really on the dance floor, a space of freedom, where I was feeling that I could reclaim myself fully in a way, without any judgment or fear from the people around me, because it's a very free space. And I have to say, the dance floor and the ski slopes and the mountains are the two places in the world where I think I used to feel the freest. And why am I talking about this? Because for me, parties and festivals are modern rituals. They are bringing together people around shamanic rhythms, and the experience that you can feel there is often transcendental, potentially. The only issue is that a lot of people are going there in a way to actually avoid their emotions, their feelings, and kind of go back to work on Monday and being depressed, and then the weekend is there, and then you party again, here to forget. And it gives you momentary kind of connection with something bigger than yourself, but then it disappears, and it often comes at quite a high cost, especially if you don't sleep and do all crazy stuff. So at some point, I decided to kind of step out from the scene, despite being quite involved, like kickstarting the return in Belgium to the early 90s rave sound. I started the first DJ artistic collective that brought back this kind of 90s rave spirit, rave sound in Belgium. And now it's basically mainstream everywhere. It's what you hear everywhere. And yeah, basically I was like, okay, I'm a bit done with this. I love music, but there's a lot of shadows. And I started to explore the more conscious and healing spaces, like Fiverism, ecstatic dance, and all kind of festivals. And it's really great. But I have to say that the art is not often at the level of the consciousness. And so you have one place where you have high quality art but often a lot of self-destruction and unconscious patterns. And on the other hand, you have high consciousness, high love, but art that often stays in this kind of conscious new age bubble. And a lot of quite early, I think, after I stopped low tape, there was the last party in 2019, which was called Sunday Ritual. And it was already had this kind of vibe of bringing people through connection to themselves and to the cosmos in a different way. And after this, I really stepped into a willingness of a synthesis between my artistic side, but also my social entrepreneur side, which also was a lot onto leadership and healing, self-transformation for system transformation. And bringing the synthesis together is really a path I'm still walking these days. And to answer more precisely your question, Alex, the different modalities, precisely how to do what I call collective shadow work is, there is infinite possibility, but the way I would put it simply for me is sound, movement, and psychotechnologies.
Timothée, that's really interesting. I'm interested in ritual architecture and what you mean by that. You mentioned Ria Beck, and during COVID, I participated in many collective presencing sessions with Ria, and we would be like 20 in a Zoom or 30. And it's really like a field would be created between us, between the silence and the spoken words, and it all emerged very naturally. And it's really like a spectacular kind of thing that happens over an hour and a half. And so for me, Ria is like architecting something in the invisible world. She architects a field that we all participate in. And I appreciate her very much for that. The way you're speaking about sound and space and art and music, it feels similar, but in a different way. So please tell me more about ritual architecture, what it is, what you mean by it.
So first, I thank you, Alex, for sharing this. I also spent quite some time in doing collective presencing during COVID with Ria. So it's also quite an inspiration when it comes to new type of dialogues. And for me, really walking this line between two parallel realities moving together. One is the words and the material, and the other one is another dimension, and they nourish each other. Yeah, I had profound experience with collective presencing. So in terms of ritual architecture, for me, I'm still experimenting. I'm not claiming I found like perfect code and solution. But what's for sure is that one key constraint for ritual space is actually the person holding the space. And often you cannot go further as a group as the space holder's capacity to hold intensity is critical for how deep you're going to go. So I have to say that I spent a lot of time on working on how can I actually defragment my nervous system and increase my capacity for grounding and for holding intensity, which is, I believe, a key skill for the future of leadership in this world. For me, a key element beyond sound, movement, and psychotechnologies, I could give you a list of different psychotechnologies and looking at how they can combine on a complementary way. I think this is important, and we need playgrounds where we can experiment with this. I think that for me, the most powerful and easily accessible and free psychotechnology of all is our masculine and feminine polarities. My experience has been that the more we can master this polarity work within us and with others, the deeper we can go. And you basically open a field that some could call a quantum field, where you can access information and realities that are beyond this 2D, 3D reality. And I think that we live at a time where the solutions that we need are not going to be linear solutions. They're not going to be CO2 capture is going to be part of it, but we need new approaches, new tools, new things that are out of our current system of thinking. And basically working with polarities, for me, has the potential to open a field from which we can download these tools and solutions that can help us address the current context. I believe there's no other place to look. Otherwise, it might actually reinforce the problem we're trying to solve.
Thank you, Timothy, to bring that on, because, yeah, I believe too that it's all about polarity, but the right natural polarity. What we are seeing now in the world, and which is often accelerated by technology, is this toxic polarity, basically, right? So where one is pointing the finger to the other, while actually we need to be able to stand in the middle and stand in the fire and hold both polarities, because it's the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine. It's basically the balance of life needs both. And but what I wanted to get to is also that we also work a lot with technology and with AI. And so how do you then, because I believe you see also technology and AI as a mirror. So how do you see that then as a mirror and magnifier of the human psyche? And how do you look at AI not as a tool, but as a mirror for consciousness? What's your lens on that? And how do you integrate that in your work? Or is it an exploration? Do you have already experiences with that personally?
So the AI, not the polarity one.
AI can be another polarity, right? So technology can be another polarity for many people.
Yeah, nature technology, that's definitely a key polarity. And for many years, I thought that tech won't save us. But if we're saved, it took me time to discover that if we're saved, technology, if we just leave, if all the people who are trying to work on system change and are thinking long term are actually leaving the technology field, we only have short term driven interest driving it, which is accelerating issues. I started to get interested into this around 2021. So regarding AI, I feel that we are lucky and doomed at the same time, because what is being offered to us is a mirror, a very precise, free, available 24/7, neutral mirror that doesn't have any ego, judgments, bias. And I think it's exactly what humanity needs at the moment to do the shadow work and collective shadow work that is required. I've been using AI as a mirror, as a journaling tool for a few months already. I would say actually a year. It has become very good, I would say, from February, March. There's been a leap in terms of the quality of the insight and the capacity of the AI to spot interdependencies and blind spots that I couldn't see myself. And I think it's an art to know how to use AI. There's a lot of possibilities, but also a lot of dangers. And yeah, for me, I think the main risk being offered all these free insights, it's like a psychedelic trip that is almost continuous. And the same relationship than doing psychedelics. If you don't integrate properly, it's spiritual tourism and it's avoidance. And it's another loop to just numb yourself from the real work, from what you really need to do. So one thing that is really key for me is that we cannot be more wise than our body's capacity. And today, AI offers us cognitive clarity, but the body is not following. And integration is really a factor of three things. It's factor of nervous system regulation, it is factor of embodied repetition, and it's a factor of relational co-regulation. And you need those three things if you want actually your insights to manifest in your life. And this is why I think it was in March, when I was like, I don't have the capacity to hold all these insights. And instead of just limiting myself, I started to think about how to create a support system that has the capacity to do that, because my current support system at that time was not capable of that. And this is where I came with this idea of these online circles where men can actually support each other in holding and integrating these AI-driven insights. And so I had a few chats with some friends, realized that it was resonating. And when we met in Brussels, you proposed me to host an experiment on your platform. And this is how we started this AI inner work practice group that is really an experimentation on the edges of AI, shadow work, and men's work, which, I believe are key themes for the future. And we're working on a course starting in September. Now it's the pilot to test, and I'm very excited about that. I think it has a lot of potential. And super happy to do this with you also.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that course. I've done quite a bit of shadow work with ChatGPT. I actually did some yesterday, and it told me some harsh truths. So it was a good session. Like even now, I'm thinking about what ChatGPT told me yesterday and how it plays out in my life, in my behaviors. And it also suggested things like how to integrate these shadows. And it was very good. Thank you. And you speak about the body, like the physical aspect. Like, what is the role of the body in integration or nervous system regulation? Do you have some practices? Is the body a part of the psyche? Is it like a map of the psyche? Like it all goes together?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's very interlinked. I spent 6 months in total in a Zen monastery called Plum Village. And over there, we're like invited to do sitting meditation 1 hour every morning, every evening. And that was quite painful and difficult for me. And after this, I realized that actually meditation is not mindfulness meditation. I'm talking about that, like focus on the breath type of meditation. It's not good for everyone because for some people, actually, the breath is not even a safe space. And I basically had to look elsewhere to find a way to increase my level of presence. And one place where I found it is through a practice called trauma release exercise, which is basically shaking. It's like reconnecting to the natural capacity of our bodies to release stored stress and tensions. And I think it's been almost 6 years that I'm shaking more or less every day, and that it brought me a lot. And maybe something I can share about TRE and maybe somatics in general, because there is something not many people know is that Freud actually had, as famous Carl Jung, the lineage, body unconscious, the collective shadow. You have the more psychoanalytic, like Lacan type of inquiry. And then you have one that got a bit forgotten, which is where all the Gabor Mate and the body keeps the score and polyvagal theory is actually rooted and inspired by. It's Wilhelm Reich, which was a student from Freud. And the thing is that Freud at that time wanted psychoanalysis to be an official discipline taught in universities. And he was doing research on sexuality at that time. And that he dropped this research for kind of political reasons, so that psychoanalysis could move on because it was a bit touchy. And Wilhelm Reich is someone who actually carried on the research of Freud on that level and pushed it much further, working with the role of the body, life force energy, and sexual energy, and also looking at the relationship with system and politics. It's fascinating, his work. But he got a bit dismissed for going in a direction that was taboo. It's true. What Wilhelm Reich has been doing and all the people that followed is really the lineage in which I'm positioning myself, not dismissing psychoanalysis. I think it's essential to actually put words on what we're feeling, but the mind can only go as far as the body goes. I think that if you cannot feel it, you cannot heal it. And working with the body is a hack to accelerate inner growth and healing, but without dismissing the mind. And I think this is really key because we saw a lot of people moving from everyone saying, oh, we need to leave the mind, go into the body. And through this, there's an implicit dismissal of the power of the mind and kind of labeling it as toxic and generating separation, and use the right one in the right context. So this is what I could say. I could talk about many different psychotechnologies also, but that's the main one for me.
Yeah, thank you, Timothy. In your view, what does the future of leadership need? What is like the infrastructure or the narrative infrastructure of that? Romantic, economically, spiritual, or otherwise? How do you see the elements for the future of leadership?
So the way I would actually link self, organizational, and system transformation on the leadership level is it's actually my experiences of when I was at university launching two collectives, one about art and music, and the other one about social entrepreneurship. It was the first social entrepreneurship student organization in Belgium. And basically, in these two collectives, I wanted to function in a horizontal and decentralized way, but it didn't really work. And one of the key reasons is that I was not owning my leadership as founder, as some people call source. And I believe that one key challenge for the future is how to own your leadership in an explicit and healthy way, especially as a man. For me, here you have the whole thing because you have the patriarchy, you have a centralized, decentralized, and then you have me, Timothy, as a leader. And when should I lead? When should I follow? When should I direct? When should I actually listen to my team? And having the sensitivity to attune to what is required in function of the context, I think for me is this essential skill for the future of leadership. And we can't be stuck in one or of polarities. It's both. And I believe that systems become much more resilient, robust, and alive when every node of the system has the capacity to lead and follow. And then the energy flows in such a more powerful way, and alive and creative way. So again, I would tie this to polarities and how we can basically use these capacity to learn to hold intensity and navigate complexity in a more effective way. The tagline we came up for Genesis is master polarity work, lead from emergence, and unlock systemic change.
I wanted to ask maybe just one additional question related to that on your experience in Web3 and all that. And what do you notice in the nervous systems of communities experimenting at the edge, whether it's Web3, psychedelic, spiritual tech, compared to older activist or spiritual circles? Like, what is your sensing there of what is happening in these communities?
I've been spending the last 10 years to actually study what are these type of decentralized communities. Web3 is a specific case in which I can maybe zoom in later, but that will start with just the decentralized organizations. There are key blind spots that you will actually find in every community, every decentralized communities that I found, because I was a bit on the quest. I didn't own my leadership and I was misaligned. I was like, okay, I'm not gonna lead any new project before I have hacked the equation of how to lead in a new way, but in a way that actually works. And I was like seeking like the aligned leader and the aligned community. And I was moving from disappointment to disappointment again and again. Okay, so maybe that's not a bug, maybe that's a feature. And so I created this map of the blind spots of decentralized organizations that you can find quite easily on my socials, which kind of maps the top 10 blind spots that I've been encountering again and again. And if you don't know them as a founder or a leader or someone active in alternative, decentralized, intentional, or impact-driven communities or collectives or organization, you're going to fall into it. There's no way. Especially if you're coming out of your burnout, of your old job, from a toxic boss. And then you're going to swing to the other side and say, oh, that's the new world. It's amazing. It's good. There's some positive aspects. Don't get me wrong. But there's at least shadows as in the old world. And I would say that the main shadows that you will find, and for me, there's this sentence from Jerry Colonna, a VC in Silicon Valley, who says the culture of an organization grows in the shadow of its founder. So you can retrace all these blind spots to how much the inner work of the founder. And the main blind spots is shadow hierarchies, unclear direction, unclear roles, and unclear boundaries. Like we don't know who's in, who's out. We don't know the different levels. There's implicit power dynamics. Decision paralysis is also big. Conflict avoidance is also something that really prevent collectives to grow because they're not ready basically to face how much they embody. It's very hard to embody to face how much we embody the old worlds and its negative sides, and how much compassion is required for me to actually hold this, all the shadows of the world we're trying to move away from with us. And unless we have the courage and the compassion to really face this and work with it consciously, which means together supporting each other to develop our capacity to hold intensity, basically, that's going to be difficult. Because the thing is that these blind spots, they stay hidden till they feel safe enough. For a long time, I was a bit like fishing for blind spots and being a bit blind spot driven. I still do sometimes. But this is often counterproductive. No one wants to have their shadows put in their face. Often, if you have a blind spot, it means actually you're not ready to hold it. Shifting and working on really at the individual level, the grounding, the nervous system, and at a collective level, the coherence capacity of a collective to actually face difficult stuff, intensity and emotions. That's really what I feel called to do. And using these healing dance floors, going into different communities and what I call islands of coherence to increase their level of coherence, for me is a mission that I really want to pursue in the next years. And because as when the system is out of balance, islands of coherence at the edges have the possibility to shift the entire system.
Thank you, Timothée. That's fascinating. I feel that's what we're doing here as well, creating islands of coherence or an island of coherence to figure out what comes next. For me, there's very much sense that the world is going through something major right now. There's like a big shift, like a collapse going on. Everything we knew about the world is changing. All the alliances are changing, institutions, everything. It truly seems very awesome to face what's going on in the world. And we're collectively seeing our shadows. There's so many shadows are now present in the world, and we're having to look at it. I wonder if in the middle of all this work, is it important, like we're code breaking everything, and art is important in this process. But in this process, is it important to create new stories already, new stories about the future? Look for new types of archetypes, maybe archetypes that have not existed on Earth yet, something to lead us to the future, so that even as we're in this process, we're in the mud, we're dirty in the mud, we can already start to see something new, some positive future that we want to live in, and we need to start creating those stories. Is that how you see things?
Yeah, I think that you need hope to move forward, but authentic hope can only be found at the bottom of despair. And if you're bypassing despair and in denial of the reality of the world right now, what you will come up with is often something pretty fake that might reinforces the problem and not help you. Regarding archetypes and imaginaries, yeah, I think that there's a sentence from James Priest, who's the founder of Sociocracy 3.0, who invites people and companies to move from the notion of vision to the notion of sense of directionality. And he's basically saying that the vision, the long-term vision, is often ego-driven, is often disconnecting you from what's really happening here right now, and is this comfort zone, which is an ego paradise. And it's not necessarily serving us always. And I'm a bit these days, a bit unsure about this hype around narratives and imaginaries that have been going on for many years. I've been doing this in 2016, before even Robotkins was doing this. I co-founded an organization called Civic Innovation Network, and I was working with public institutions in Brussels. And I don't really believe in this notion of collective vision at an organizational level, at least. And I'm rather work with what's here right now. I hear you. We need some kind of direction and destination. Otherwise, like, where are we moving? But I think we need to be careful to not use these imaginaries and narratives to disconnect us from what's here right now. I have other things to say about this, but it's not accessible right now. Maybe it will come afterwards. I'm at the moment in a community called Lakefront, and Perspectiva gave a workshop called Anti-Debate. And it's basically, you work with a statement. It's the intention of it to create a wee space. And the statement was, only a new religion can save the world. And I think that this question that you're asking is actually touching on this. Because once you realize the religious nature of capitalism, it becomes obvious that we need a new form of theology. And for me, this new religion, that could be also multiple religion. It doesn't have to be one. And at the same time, how can we hold multiplicity and singularity at the same time? Again, it's paradox here, because I believe that despite it will be many different religions, there might be a red thread that connect them all. My intuition, it has to do on how men and women are actually relating together and how we're building families and how we build because in the communities and society, because the smallest community you need is actually the family. And the family, to reproduce, you need a man and a woman. Like, it has a lot to do with male-female relationships. So that's my intuition. That's where I'm putting my bets, that some new form of relationship and new archetypes that will take the best of the old and the new. The gender fluid patriarch, for instance. Like, that could be like an interesting archetype to play with. I think this is useful. It's something I would like to work on and to develop in the future and bring in a lot of play in the mix too.
Thank you, Timothy. Actually, you answered the last question, which is, which seed are you planting for future generations?
What are the seeds that I'm planting for future generation? I think they're in deep trouble, to be honest. It's not easy to be young in this world. We were talking about, I don't know, I think it was again on Philosophy Portal, we're talking about breaking out of the internet, how like a group of young people could break free from the internet. And that would be potentially the seed of something new. Because when you're young, you just don't want to do like your parents. Are they going to be strong enough to not be caught into these addictions mechanisms and technology, addictive technologies? I don't know. I hope so. But I think that what I heard is that a lot of young people are actually less concerned by climate change and more concerned about gender, pronouns, and this theme. So for me, like, we don't need to bypass our bodies to move forward in the future. We can honor our sexual differences, find the beauty in it, and still creating something new. It doesn't have to be going back. That's the message I would like to bring. And sometimes it's required to go back, but it's a bit like a catapult. You'll go back and then boom, you can throw the thing a bit much further. But if you're so resistant of anything which is about the old world, which I was for a long time, and I'm still to some degree, we're not going to make it, because you don't build a new world out of a blank page. It is always transcend and include, take the best, leave the rest. And the more we resist honoring the positive aspects of the old world, the more it will resist to die. And believe that honoring what in our lives we can see as the old world that has hurt us, whether it's a boss, a teacher, a parent, society, whatever. Just having the courage to see that we got hurt and that we don't have the capacity anymore for complex perspective. And that when we're wounded, we're stuck in a binary black or white view, and we can't see the good and the bad narrative, and we can't see the more nuanced and complex reality. And I think that doing this healing work and honoring what has been and the positive side of it is key to move forward. Yeah.
This has been fascinating, Timothée. We're coming to a close here. I really enjoyed this conversation a lot. And where can people find you? We're going to put links to your websites. I think you're on Substack, but where would you orient people to find you, or what is your next thing you want people to know about?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. So yeah, if people want to follow my work, they can follow me on LinkedIn. They can follow me on Substack for the more alternative, edgy stuff at Disco Punk with a 0. Disco Punk in one word with a 0. We're going to put up a new course of AI shadow work practice group with Rudy after the summer. And maybe more importantly, I'm organizing on the 27th, 28th of September at the Commons Hub Brussels, a 2-day event, the second edition of the Genesis Experience, that will be focused on the future of the family and the commons. You can already look at the website, genesisexperience.com, and it's Genesis Experience. There's no E at the beginning of experience. So SIES Experience. And I think this is going to be a powerful event. So you better be there.
Thank you, Timothy. Yeah, we'll include all the links in the descriptions of the podcast, of course. And thank you for this wonderful conversation and having a bit of a look in your world and your activities.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rudy and Alex, also for starting this podcast. I'm looking forward to see the episodes with the other guests. And yeah, congratulations for initiating this.